Crafters, it's Cynthia. Today we are going to do a 6-card 1-kit video. So I am showing you a picture of the kit, and this one is called Favorite Person, and it's for January 2018, and it includes the Simon Says Stamp exclusive Really Like You clear stamps, 12 single-sided sheets of the Pebbles Ink Forever My Always paper, Crate Paper's Main Squeeze puffy stickers, a cube of the Sukaneko Delicata Pink Shimmer ink pad, 1 jar of the Tim Holtz Vintage Platinum Distressed Glitter Dust, and 1 each of Simon Says Stamps metallic envelopes in Doll Pink, Schoolhouse Red, Cotton Candy, Ivory, and Cream, and 1 sheet each of Simon's cardstock in 100-pound weight in Black, Mint, Cotton Candy, Doll Pink, Schoolhouse Red, and 1 sheet of Nina Desert Storm. Right, card number 1 is a shaker. So I used a piece of the pattern paper for the background, and then one of My Favorite Things rectangle shaker windows, filled it with the glitter, and also 3 colors of sequins from Pretty Pink Posh. So for the main panel, I just hand cut a rectangle out of it so that I can put my shaker in there when it's time. But I want to do some stamping first. So I'm taking the stamp set and I'm going to use all 4 of the solid hearts from the set that come in different sizes. And I'm just going to use some different pink inks from different companies, and I'll have the names on the screen. This first ink is beautiful and it's very light, so I'm actually double stamping. And now I am moving on to the next size down. And again, I'm just kind of doing a little random pattern, whatever I think looks good. So a little bit of overlapping and kind of in a diagonal running across the card front was my plan. And so the littlest heart is going to be in the darkest ink. So now I'm using the Love You sentiment stamp, and I'm going to stamp it in my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is a very beautiful ink for sentiments. It's very black and very crisp. And then to attach the shaker window, I'm using some double-sided tape, and I'm just putting it on the back of my panel right around the edges of that opening. And this way I'll be able to just lay it down over the pouch and attach it. And then I'm going to layer this panel down on a piece of black cardstock just to give it a pop and help it stand out from the card base. And of course I'm using a top folding A2 card base, so I'll just go ahead and attach my panel down. And that is card number 1. And I really love that beautiful glitter in there. Okay, so for card 2, I'm going to use that pretty largest solid heart, and I'm reaching for the bubble gum again, and this time it's Mint Macaron dye ink from Stampin' Up, and I'm just going to use those 2 colors and stamp out kind of a row of hearts. So I had a very specific idea in my head when I was doing this. So first the bubble gum, and then I'll come in with the mint. And the mint stamps darker than it ends up. So when it's all dry, it lightens up a bit. So now I'm taking the little stitched outline heart from the stamp set, and I'm using my VersaFine Black ink, and I'm just going to stamp that inside the edges of each one of those colored hearts. I love using soft colors with black as an accent. And now I'm taking my Simon Says Stamp clear embossing powder, and I'm just going to cover up that stamping, and then I'm also going to add some small hearts just as accents, and I'm doing them also in the black. I just cannot get enough of these little hearts. They're so cute. And then I will also put embossing powder on those. And you want to make sure that the pink ink the pink ink for sure is dry, because it actually takes a while to dry and your embossing powder will stick to it. So be sure to be aware of that before you try to melt the powder. So now for the sentiment, I'm just taking a little strip of the mint cardstock from the kit, and I'm using these little words from the stamp set, and my little sentiment says, "Love you bunches." So now I'm going to stamp that in the black again, and I will also cover it with clear embossing powder and just melt it. I love how bright that clear embossing over black is. And then I'm going to cut down my little strip and then just flag the ends real quick here with my little tiny scissors. I'm not the best at this, but I try. So now I'm using a top folding landscape orientation card, and I'm going to put down another layer of black. And I wanted to put in some pattern paper, so I took this cute paper from the pack, and now I want to use a cute little edge die for the white panel, and I'm using one of the Valentine borders from the Lawn Fawn set, and I want to make sure I've got room here for my sentiment, so I laid that down temporarily. Now I will tack down the strip and cut it out. That just gives such a cute little edge to something that would be otherwise plain. So I'm just going to attach that down, and then for the sentiment I'm going to pop it up on just a little bit of my foam tape, because otherwise the card was completely flat and I needed a little dimension to make me happy. So there we go. And that one turned out really cute. That was card number 2. So this is card number 3, and even though I really wanted to use that beautiful floral paper, I was sort of disappointed with this card, but I'm forging ahead. So I cut part of a large 4.5-inch circle out of that pretty paper, and I'm putting down a piece of the mint cardstock on my card base, and then I will put that floral circle right on top. And I'm not worrying about that it isn't a complete circle because it's going to get covered up partially. So now I'm taking a strip of the red cardstock from the kit, and I'm using that beautiful pink shimmer, I think it was called, ink. And I'm just going to repeatedly stamp the XOXO all over that red strip. And I'm using the grid marks here on my MISTI to kind of guide me in my stamping. So there is the finished panel, and I also put a little bit of clear embossing powder on top just to seal it and make it ready to go quickly. So now I'm taking the sentiment piece and I'm just going to pop it up on some foam, and obviously I used a little rectangle of the mint cardstock behind that sentiment. And now I am using some white Nuvo drops, and I'm just going to kind of add these just to give a little pop. And then it's neat because the floral paper has little white dots already in it, so I kind of liked adding those. And that is card number 3. All right, so for this card I decided to do some ink blending, and I'm just using the traditional distress inks, and I'm running the color names across the bottom of the screen. And I'm starting off with the cracked pistachio, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm kind of tilting my blending tool so that I don't get real big circles. I just wanted a little bit of little pops of the cracked pistachio, and now I'm coming in with the dried marigold, and the dried marigold next to the pistachio, they don't have a bad blending reaction, so that's why I'm doing them in the order that I'm doing. So now I'm coming in with the Worn Lipstick, which is a real pretty pink, and this one I'm letting it overlap the marigold, but I'm trying to stay away from the pistachio because they wouldn't make such a pretty color together. So I'm kind of trying to be careful while I do this. And finally, I'm coming in now with the Barn Door, which is more of a true red, and I'm just adding some of that. So here is the finished panel, which is dry, but I'm adding some nice big splatters of water, and so that's why I'm using my larger squirt bottle. And I love the splattering I get when I use my Bristol Smooth cardstock. I just really like that. So now that it's totally dry, I am rubbing my anti-static bag over it, and I'm taking that big heart again, which is obviously my favorite stamp, and I am going to use my Versamark sticky ink and just randomly stamp that heart all over the place. And I'm kind of looking at the background too through the stamp, so I'm sort of capturing my favorite little spots in the ink blending, if that makes sense, because I'm going to use clear embossing powder, and so whatever is underneath those hearts is going to sort of be highlighted. Now I'm using that smaller solid heart stamp, and I'm just filling in some of the bigger gaps where I could use a little extra. And this is the Ranger clear embossing powder, and I don't know if you've ever used any of the Ranger powders, but they are a really high quality, and I just love it. So for these solid stamps, that clear is a terrific choice. And now I'm going to melt it, and it really, really melts like butter. It's amazing. So I'm just going to watch what I'm doing here. Make sure I get every last bit of that powder melted. And this is the Emboss Resist technique that I'm doing. So I want to make sure that my embossing is as good as I can do it. So now this is a moment where everyone hold your breath. I'm actually going to cover over that pretty background with some chipped sapphire ink. And don't think I'm crazy, but this was the plan from the beginning. So it was hard to cover, but I knew in the end it would look good. So anyway, I'm just laying down a nice solid layer of that chipped sapphire. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to put black soot over this blue. Now the blue is beautiful, but I didn't want it to be blue. I wanted it to be black. So I'm layering the two together because the black soot by itself can, I don't know, it looks a little washed out unless you ink blend for, 2.5 hours. So I decided that using the blue and the black together would be faster and give me a really rich color, which I love. So I'm going to briefly clean up my little mat here, and then I'm going to carefully start rubbing away the excess ink from the embossing. So this was a little tricky, and I ended up doing it about 3 different times just to get everything off that I could. And it did fade the black a little, but that's okay. So now I'm using my Lawn Fawn Love Ya die. And what I'm doing here is I'm laying the die face down on a piece of the Cotton Candy Pink cardstock, and I'm just tracing it because I want to have a little bubble shadow, if you will, for my sentiment. So now I hand cut that out, and I'm just erasing my little pencil marks from the edges to make sure that it looks pristine. And this really wasn't difficult to do. It wasn't really tedious or anything. So now I'm using my Zig glue pen with that nice roller ball tip, and I'm just dotting some glue all along those little letters, and I'm just going to stick this down to that bubble shadow I made, and there it is. Now I also popped that up on some foam to give it some lift, and here is my card base, and I wanted pink behind it, but I didn't want to waste a whole piece of my cotton candy, so I just cut out the center with one of my rectangle dies, and then that way I can use that rectangle somewhere else because it'll be hidden behind this panel. So now I am laying down that distress panel I created, and I'm just going to put my cute little sentiment across the front of it, a little bit towards the bottom. I just want to make sure I get that as straight as I can. So I'm going to use some Pretty Pink Posh Pink Blush Sequins. I felt that this card just needed a little something, but I didn't want to distract, excuse me, from the pretty colored background. So anyway, that is the card, and you can see that pretty glossy shine you get because of the embossing. Very cute. All right, so card number 5 is actually quite a few steps, but I think the end result is cute. So I'm taking a strip stamp from the set of those little hearts, and I actually just curved it into a circle. And now I'm using the pink shimmer ink, and I'm just going to completely randomly stamp those heart circles all over the place. And although the ink is light, it really looks pale here on the video, so I apologize for that. But here is that cute finished panel, and look at how nice those shimmery hearts are. It's really very pretty in person. So now I have this little piece of black cardstock, and surprise, surprise, I'm using the large heart stamp again, and I'm using my Versamark sticky ink, and I'm going to get a really good impression there. And I'm using the Hero Arts white embossing powder, and I'm just going to make sure that it's well covered. So I will melt that in. And now I'm picking a circle die that is just a little bit bigger than the heart. And now I'm taking the smaller heart stamp, and again I'm going to do some heat embossing in the clear. So I'm going to do this just on a little scrap of yellow cardstock I had on hand. That's a basil cardstock from my little scrap bin. And I'm using the Ranger clear embossing powder again. I'll melt those real quick. Now I'm just going to fussy cut those little hearts out, but at the bottom where the little point of the heart is, I'm actually going to leave a little bit of a tab. So I'm going to be attaching these, and I want that tab there for the glue. So now, if you can't tell what I'm doing, I am building a little tiny penguin. And so I'm going to use my multi-medium mat, and I'm just going to attach those little feet to the back of his little round body. I mean, he's already darling, isn't he? So now I'm taking just a tiny triangle of that same yellow, and I'm just going to attach that down. And the matte medium is nice because it'll dry rock hard even on top of that plastic embossing. So now I'm adding just a pair of googly eyes. And then I have these two little pieces. They're actually flower petals from a die that I had, but I thought they'd make perfect little flippers for him. So I'm just getting those into position, and I want one of them up because he's going to be holding a balloon. And so he's got his little flipper angled up. And there we go. And now I'm taking a piece of white cardstock and I'm laying down some double-sided tape. And then I'm going to use that balloon shaped die and pop it out and pull away the release paper so that the sticky is exposed. And now I'm going to use that pretty glitter from the kit to completely cover the balloon. And I'm just burnishing it in really, really well with my fingertip. And yes, it's going to get everywhere. I'm not going to lie. But look how pretty. I mean, it's worth it, don't you think? So now back to the stamps. I'm using the You're My Favorite sentiment, and I'm just going to stamp that directly onto my created panel. And I'm using the VersaFine black ink again. And I will seal that with the clear embossing powder just as I did before. I just really wanted my sentiment to be shiny since parts of the penguin are. Now I've got this little strip of pattern paper from the kit, and I'm just going to run that across the bottom just for color and interest, and then also it kind of gives a spot for our penguin to stand. And there's the balloon, and I'm just laying them temporarily because I wanted to throw in a few little hearts in the background. And so I'm just scattering them around, and then I will use my red geranium embossing powder on those hearts. And now I'm just going to tape a piece of red and white baker's twine to the back of the balloon, and then I want it popped up also. And now I put that panel I created on a piece of the Schoolhouse Red cardstock just to frame it. And now I'm getting my things into position, and I will glue, or excuse me, I'm using tape to hold that baker's twine behind the penguin. And then I will just nip the end and get them both permanently attached. And I also made a little tiny bow, and I'm going to use a little blob of my quick dry glue and set the bow right in there. And once that's dried, it will be there permanently. So I'm using a side folding card base. And I'm just going to put my panel down on top. And that is my cute little penguin card. I really, really love this card. It's just so fun, and it was a lot of fun to create. Okay, so for card number 6, I pulled out my Lawn Fawn Stitch Square dies, and these are 1, 2, 3, and 4 inch. So I'm taking the 1 inch and the 3 inch dies, and I'm going to use some pattern papers. So first I'm going to use those little hearts, that paper there, and I cut 4 1 inch squares, and I'm just backing it on some black just because it felt like it needed a frame. And then I cut the cotton candy pink piece with the 3 inch square. So I'm just going to lay those out evenly. And now I'm finally using the puffy stickers, which are absolutely darling. And I'm going to just take 2 of those little smiling hearts. And then I'm going to use 2 of the pretty lips. And I'm just filling up my squares that way. And then for the sentiment, I'm using I Really Like You. And I wanted to use that conversation heart paper. So I already have a panel there that is cut to size. And I'm just going to stamp the sentiment directly onto the panel with my VersaFine black ink. And then I'm just going to throw in a couple of little tiny black hearts just to kind of jazz it up a little bit. And that panel is going to be attached down to a piece of black cardstock just for a frame. And then my card base is a top folding A2 size card. So again, I'm just going to attach that down there. I've said it before, but layering with black is one of my very favorite things to do. So I hope you're not tired of it. And then this panel is actually the full size of the card base, and it's a little, I trimmed it down to fit perfect. So now on my square here, I wrapped a little bit of red and white baker's twine around it and tied a bow just to add another element, which I think looks really cute. And then I'm gonna pop up the whole thing on some foam tape, and that is the final card. And I think this one is actually my favorite one. I love the colors. All right, so let's go ahead and review the 6 cards that we made this time. So this is the first card, and it was the shaker where I used the glitter from the card pack. Card kit, I should say. And here's card number 2, where I did some overlapping inking and a little bit of heat embossing. And card number 3, where I pretty much just let the paper speak for itself. So I really liked that. And then this fun one, card number 4, with the Emboss Resist technique. And of course card number 5 with that cute little penguin. I love that little guy. What a fun way to use a heart stamp too. And finally card number 6, where I got to use the cute puffy stickers and this wonderful conversation heart paper, which I just love. I wish I had like 10 sheets of just that paper. That would be great. All right, so I hope that you enjoyed these 6 cards. I really had a lot of fun putting these all together. I'm not normally a big Valentine card maker for some reason, but these card kits are great because it kind of gets me into the flow, and then I realize that Valentine cards are actually a lot of fun to make. So I hope that you're happy crafting wherever you are, and thank you again for waiting for this video. I know that it's just a little bit late, but with all that sickness and everything going around in the family, there was no way I could get to it sooner. So you guys take care of yourselves, and I'll see you all again very, very soon with a new video. Bye-bye.